So you're in Charleston, South Carolina. You're on one of those, I don't know, one of those little salt marshes there. You're doing a little fishing, maybe a little crabbing, and you see these little bitty crustaceans. They kind of look odd. One of them has this humongous claw on one end, and a little bitty claw like this. It kind of looks like a T-Rex. So what do you think? Well, that's a fiddler crab, or what they call down there a one claw. Today, we're going to be talking about One Claw from Westbrook Brewing down in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. If you're ever down there, definitely stop in. They have some of the widest selections of beers you're ever going to see in South Carolina. So, stick with us. We got more to come. Okay, so you're off the salt marsh and you're coming back into your hotel, or maybe you go out to eat or somewhere in Charleston, South Carolina, and you want a really good beer. You don't really want an IPA, but you want something very crisp, very clean, a little fruity, kind of like an IPA, but not quite that style. Well, you're around Charleston, there's plenty of restaurants, and you look for Westbrook. Hopefully I've positioned that right. You're going to look for Westbrook. Westbrook is a brewery out of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Actually, one of my best breweries that we have here in South Carolina. They make a ton of brews. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the front. They make a ton of brews of all different styles, everything you'd ever want in a beer. Now, this is a rye pale ale. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes because American pale ales are a kind of a unique little animal. Pale ales have been around for quite a long time. In America, we tend to do things a little different. Now, in this case, we're going to have rye added into the grain bill. And rye is going to give it, well, a little bit of rye bread, maybe pumpernickel flavor. So think pumpernickel. As well, you're going to find out a little bit more about the hops flavoring in it. And the hops makes a big difference in how they do the hops flavoring. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the rye pale ale and what exactly a rye pale ale is, or a rye beer anyway. Rye beer. In darker versions, malt flavor can optionally include low roasted malt characters, evident as cocoa, chocolate, or caramel, and/or aromatic toffee-like, caramel, or biscuit-like characters. Remember, it's got rye in it, so it's going to taste a little bit more like a bread. Low-level roasted malt astringency is acceptable when balanced with low to medium malt sweetness. Again, you're going to taste a little bit of pumpernickel, so it's got a little bit of that pumpernickel sweetness to it. Hop flavor is low to medium. Hop bitterness is low to medium. So it's not going to be your traditional IPA. And it's not going to be really bitter, but it's going to taste exceptional because, again, we're going to talk about the hops that go into it. These beers can be made using either ale or lager yeast. Wow, I did not know that. Usually you would think an ale would be made with ale yeast, and we'll get into different types of yeast in another episode. Suffice it to say, it could be made with either one. And there are certain styles, by the way, that are made with lager yeast that are considered ales. Who'd have knew? The addition of rye to a beer can add a spicy or pumpernickel character to the flavor and finish. Color can also be enhanced and may become more red from using the rye malt. The ingredient has become in vogue in recent years in everything from stouts to lagers, but is especially popular with craft breweries in India pale ales. IPAs, gotta love those, right? To be considered an example of the style, the grain bill should include sufficient rye, such that rye character is evident in the beer. You gotta be able to taste it. Now, if you've never tasted a rye beer, once you do, you know it, and it's good stuff. Now, this is off of Westbrook's site, as well as another site here, and they go in to describe Westbrook Rye Pale Ale. One Claw, a zesty and tropical pale ale brewed with a touch of malt rye and citra hops. Citra hops! I wonder what that's going to taste like. This beer is a single hopped rye pale ale featuring the citra hop, Citra has some crazy tropical fruit flavors and aromatics. Think mango, pineapple, and passion fruit. Now, when you taste beer, and especially when we use our beer judge certification program, you're going to write down these characteristics. And by the way, do print out the beer judge certification score sheet. The link is in the description. It's going to come in very handy when you write down the characteristics of whatever beer you're trying. You can take the sheet with you, or, like I said in the last episode, bring your beer review logbook with you. Again, handy pocket size. I don't make any money out of selling these, but you can find this off of Amazon for $8.99. Add in 10% malt rye just to make it interesting, and you have a super sensational pale ale, perfect for the warm Charleston summer. I got to tell you, if you're down in Charleston, you're going to need a beer. I guarantee you that. Now, give you a little bit of the specs on Westbrook One Claw. 5.5% alcohol by volume, or if I say ABV, that's what that means. It's an American pale ale. Its hops are Citra. That's what the hops are boiled with. Now, the description I just read a second ago didn't say anything about dry hopping, but it is dry hopped with Azacca Citra hops. So there's two different hop varieties there. It's made with American ale yeast and with pale malt, rye, and wheat malt. And of course, those different types of malts can be used in just about anything, so long as it's convertible into sugar. I'll go into how beer is made in another episode, so you don't have to worry about that part. But I did want to bring one thing to light here, something that really jumped out at me. Dry hopped. Okay. This is something that happened way back when IPAs were invented, and they were developed in England, whereby you had to take a beer to travel across the south end of Africa to get to India. What they did was, when you brew the beer, you brew it, you put the hops in, and it boils along with the rest of the solution. We call it wort. And then once you take it, you're going to ferment it. After it gets fermented, you're going to take another inclusion of hops, different hops or the same hops, it really doesn't matter, and you're going to put it into the secondary fermentation tank. And what the secondary fermentation tank does is allows all the little yeasties and all the little particulates to float to the bottom. It's called flocculation. But what they're going to do is they're going to add in these additional hops to further flavor it. In the case of an IPA, they put in extra hops so that it's allowed to travel that long distance to India. Now, once it got there, it's going to be more like an English bitter, if you would, because it's kind of aged. It's a long trip. So it had to last. It couldn't spoil. Anyhow, that's our pseudo history of the day. Let's get to talking about the beer. That's what you're really here for. Now, one thing they say here, I'm going to see if I can find it on the can. They don't have it on the can. I thought they did. Anyhow, one thing that I had read as to drinking it by was a number of different glasses. Now, again, we're going to go into another complete episode on beer etiquette and drinking beer and the types of beer glasses you can use. It's very important because if you're going somewhere and you want to look smart and you want to look like you know what you're doing, knowing the type of glass that you need is going to be extremely important. It kind of gives you a little bit of street creds when it comes to beer. Now we're going to taste our beer. Okay, so again, I do want to mention, if you haven't, go ahead and print out the BJCP, that is the Beer Judge Certification Program, beer score sheet. The link is in the description. Print it out and use it. And I'm not going to write anything on it just yet because you really don't need to see me write anything on a piece of paper and wait for me to finish. But I will be going through the 5 characteristics that beer judges look for in a beer: aroma, appearance, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall impression. And I'm going to see if I can link these up here, or at least list them as titles here onto the side. Gosh, if I can get my video editing program to do that, that'd be great, don't you think? We've got our beer review logbook here. We've got our score sheet, and which we're going to look at to judge our beer with. Now, Westbrook. Let's crack this thing. How about that? Lovely sound. Now, in ales, you're going to be drinking it somewhere about 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's... Now, I'm pouring it. As you see, I tilt it a little bit, and then I'm just going to go ahead and dump it all in there because I like to have just a little bit of head. Sometimes I'll let it go all the way up to the top, and they call that glass proud. Now, the appearance. It's slightly hazy from what I can tell. It almost looks like lemonade. It's a little bit lighter than what I expected. It is a pale ale, so it's going to be pale, but it isn't the red color as the description says. It's got nice little bubbles coming up from the bottom, and you do want to see some bubbles. So that indicates it's decently carbonated, kind of moderately carbonated. If it just foams over and gives you all sorts of trouble with gas and foam, you know, that may be the style. I don't know. Certain beers do, certain beers don't. Now, the foam has not completely receded, but I can see through it down into the beer. So it hasn't retained a lot of the foam. And smell, we're going to have the aroma. It does smell citrusy. Kind of a grapefruit. Yes, I will believe the pineapple. Mango, okay, yeah, we'll taste that. But it does have a very strong citrusy smell to it. Not really floral. It smells like an IPA. But it is a rye pale ale. And again, pale ales were very similar, related to IPAs. India Pale Ale. All right, let's taste it. Yes, definitely. Definitely has that citrus taste. I'm tasting grapefruit. I'm definitely tasting grapefruit. I'm definitely tasting some pineapple along with that. Maybe mango. Mango, I wouldn't go in that direction, but then again, that could be me. And I drank coffee before this, so sue me. Medium carbonation on the tongue, so it's not overwhelming with carbonation. The back end has a little bit of a floral flavor to it, kind of like I'm tasting a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of a there's a plant, there's a flower, there's something going on there. It's not spicy. It's not like I'm, you know, tasting pepper or like I'm tasting herbs of some sort. But it's almost like I'm tasting some sort of a floral taste to it, but not a rose, not something like you would find in a florist shop, just some leaf. I can taste the malt. I can't really taste the rye per se. It's got a little bit of a tartness to it. It's not astringent, but it's got a little bit of that bite to it. And this is how you can tell it's a rye, is that if you've got a little bit of a bite to it, nothing overwhelming. You definitely want to make sure that you can tell those differences. Malt can be sweet. I'm not tasting chocolate or cocoa. I'm definitely tasting the citrus in it. So that's where you get the Citra hops and the Azacca hops. It is dry hopped. Now, one other thing here is the mouth feel. How does it feel in your mouth? And especially a rye, what it's going to do, it should be a little drier. You're not going to get that cloying sweetness like you would with some other types of beers. Let's say a Hefeweizen, which is really thick, or a stout, which can be real sweet, unless it's an Irish dry stout. When you get into this, you're going to be tasting not only just the grapefruit, but it should be dry. That rye is going to give you that dryness. Okay. Now, we did talk and we did say that, yes, rye will give you a little bit of that sweetness to it, like a pumpernickel. Yes, this is true. But rye has a tendency to be a little bit more cleaner. And that's one way of putting it, either dry or clean. Okay. The descriptions, the all flavors, I don't really taste any all flavors. It's a 5.5% alcohol. I don't really taste a lot of alcohol bite to it. You know, it's not astringent. Estery. Estery is a very good thing in certain types of beers, fruits, fruit flavorings, or roses. What are we tasting this? We tasted grapefruit and some pineapple and a little bit of floral along with it. Again, that floral is going to come from that dry hop. Grassy, no. Lystruck, no. Metallic, definitely not. Musty, oxidized, phenolic, solvent, definitely not solvent. You'll know when you get a solvent tasting beer. It'll taste like it has acetone in it or some medicinal flavor to it. Sour or acidic? Well, it's going to be sour anyway because it's got rye in it. And rye is more dry than would be your regular malt. We'll go into different types of malt in a different episode. Yeasty. Well, it is a little hazy, but then again, that could be the filtering process or the secondary fermentation process. Overall impression, I like it. I really do. I would choose this over an IPA any day. I'm not an IPA guy by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just not an IPA guy. So we talked about the aroma. Okay, aroma smells good. It smells like very citrusy. The appearance, we've got hazy. The flavor, I mean, we have a great grapefruit and pineapple flavor to it. Mouthfeel, dry as normal. And overall impression, yeah, I liked it. It is Westbrook. I mean, you can't go wrong with Westbrook. Now, I do want to say another thing about Westbrook. First of all, Charleston. If you ever get to go to Charleston, you got to go to Charleston. I mean, come on. But more importantly, Westbrook has one of the largest selections of brews that they make. That's it for the review of the beer. Again, I do want to say thank you, but I do want to also mention the two books that I had. The Beer Review Logbook and the Total Wine Guide to Beer. You definitely want to see if you can find these two. These are going to be absolutely helpful for you on your beer journey. The BJCP Score Sheet. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode here. I really enjoyed bringing it to you. Remember, hit the subscribe button, right? Hit the notification bell to know when the next one comes up, and hit the like button. It helps myself and the team here bring wonderful content to you. This is only the second episode, but I got to tell you, I really enjoy bringing this stuff to you. Now, following that, Slancha, Prost, Kanpai, Chin Chin, Salud, and of course, cheers. Delicious.